Peace and welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network, folks. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you for tuning in. Today, we got some great conversations for you. The first one, the big conversation, is this leaked Supreme Court document, this draft, where the Supreme Court has shown a majority vote on eliminating Roe v. Wade. We'll talk about what the implications of this draft being leaked are. We'll bring you up to date on the latest around the Supreme Court. Also, at the 4 o'clock hour, we're going to be checking in with the CEO of the American Society of Appraisers to talk to us about how you can get your personal belongings appraised for its correct value and the impact that it has had on Black consumers. We'll have that conversation. And then later, let's talk a little bit about effective activism or performative gestures. I'm going to just ask the question, when you have the big platform, what do you do best to get your message across? Which will work? We'll talk about how some folks at the Met Gala made a statement, but was the statement right or wrong? We'll have that conversation. Plus, we got trends posting doing the most, so stay with us. We got a lot to get you on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to the show. We got a lot to get to. Big news coming out of Washington, D.C., as there has been a leaked Supreme Court case draft that has been put out there publicly at the wrong time. Folks, it was first reported in Politico, and it has set fire. This Supreme Court draft is just an indication of where the Supreme Court of the United States stands on one of the most controversial and sensitive topics facing our country, which is the abortion issue. And it came out that it looks like the majority of the justices do not support Roe v. Wade. This is the 1973 case that had established where a woman will be constitutionally protected to make the choice of aborting a child or not aborting a child. And this decision has been overturned based upon this draft, folks. Based upon this draft, this majority was written by Justice Alito, where they're looking at this and saying that the 1973 ruling was wrong. I want to just share with you. Take a look at that, folks. This is a draft. Now, here's the thing. When Politico announced that it leaked this document, this is a document that has not been fully voted on. So this is, as I mentioned, this is a draft. Now, Chief Justice Roberts said that this was an egregious breach of security because nothing like this is supposed to happen. You do not supposed to know what the justices discuss before they make their decision public. So he has launched an investigation into looking at how this document was leaked. But along with that, it's also been determined that by this being a draft, it does not mean that this is a final decision, a final ruling on this issue, and that even though the majority of the justices have signed on, it could mean that it could change based on on a lot of different factors. Now, this whole talk about abortion is based upon a case coming out of Mississippi, where the state has banned any abortion 15 weeks into the pregnancy, 15 weeks old. And so we're looking at a situation where the Supreme Court is trying to figure it out. The state is trying to figure it out. The Supreme Court, based upon this draft, is saying this is not going to be a federally protected choice or decision. This has to go down to the states if they want to restrict or ban abortions. Big, absolutely big. First, I want to bring in my culture crew member, Lise Winnie on this conversation. And then in a few moments, we'll play what President Biden had to say, some of the latest words that he had to say about this issue. But Lise, again, thank you so much for joining us. This is huge. This is big right here, Lise. But for those who are ignited with anger, with fire, who are saying that this 49-year-old precedent or constitutional right is about to be demolished, I think that only the safe thing is that this is a draft, that this is not a final decision. But what do you take from it?
Yeah, again, this is a draft. It doesn't mean this, in fact, because I've heard people talking about it saying, oh, they've overturned. I was like, not quite. So when there are opinions or that are drafted, they can always change the verbiage, the wording. And so we don't know. We won't know until June. So they will release this information in June, and that's when we'll actually find out what their opinions are. It's a scary thing for women's rights, especially women's reproductive rights in this country. It's always been a battle for women, and this is something that shows that we have a problem here. Again, the prince said, this is something that he will stand behind, but it is still a little bit shaky as he is a lifelong Catholic, and this is not something that he believes in, even though he said he does not impose his faith on anyone else. So it should be interesting to see how this actually does play out. And it's funny that we're seeing this leaked. Now, I believe this is the first time in history that a full draft has actually been leaked, but it is not the first time in history that we've gotten pieces of drafts. I think actually when it came in 1973 at the Washington Post, I think that there was like Larry Hammond, who was a Supreme Court clerk, had leaked some information to the Washington Post about the decision. So this is something, again, with the leak, is something we do have to look into. We should not be seeing this before they actually hash it all out, but it's a whole mess. So it should be interesting to see how this all plays out, especially for Democrats coming in an election year.
Yeah, considering that the court justices mostly are conservative, and so for something like this to happen is I think it's a huge blow. And I mean, and I hate to think like this, Lise, it could work out politically in the Democrats' favor. It could ignite a very sleepy Democratic base to whoa, wait a minute, hold up, what? to like, let's figure something else out. I mean, it could, the ripple effect of this whole situation is, we don't know what's going to happen. But I want to play what President Biden had to say as he was on the tarmac earlier today, once he got word that that this leak had happened and that there were a number of people that are trying to figure out what to do and how to move forward. Check out what President Biden had to say, folks.
Well, I just got a call saying that it's been announced that it is a real draft, but it doesn't represent who's going to vote for it yet. I hope there are not enough votes for it. It's the main reason why I worked so hard to keep Robert Bork off the court. It reflects his view almost was anyway. Look, the idea that it concerns me a great deal that we're going to, after 50 years, decide a woman does not have a right to choose within the limits of the Supreme Court decision in case number one. But even more, equally as profound is the rationale used. And it would mean that every other decision relating to the notion of privacy is thrown into question. I realize this goes back a long way, but one of the debates I had with Robert Bork was whether Griswold versus Connecticut should stand as law. The state of Connecticut said that the privacy of your bedroom, a husband and wife or a couple could not choose to use contraception. To use the contraception was a violation of the law. If the rationale of the decision as released were to be sustained, a whole range of rights are in question. A whole range of rights. And the idea we're letting the states make those decisions, localities make those decisions, would be a fundamental shift in what we've done. So it goes far beyond, in my view, if it becomes a law and if what is written is what remains. It goes far beyond the concern of whether or not there is the right to choose. It goes to other basic rights, the right to marry, the right to determine a whole range of things. Because one of the issues that this court, many of the members of the court, a number of the members of the court, have not acknowledged is that there is a right to privacy in our Constitution. I strongly believe there is. I think the decision in Griswold was correct overruling. I think the decision in Roe was correct because there's a right to privacy. There can be limitations on it, but it cannot be denied.
Do you think this leak has irreparably changed the court? Do you think that this leak has irreparably changed the court? We've never seen this happen before.
Well, you know, if this decision holds, it's really quite a radical decision. And again, the underlying premise, and again, I've not had a chance to thoroughly go into the report, the decision. But it basically says all the decisions relating to your private life, who you marry, whether or not you decide to conceive a child or not, whether or not you can have an abortion, a range of other decisions, whether or not how you raise your child. What does this do? Does this mean that in Florida they can decide they're going to pass a law saying that same-sex marriage is not permissible? It's against the law in Florida. So there's a whole, it's a fundamental shift in American jurisprudence.
On the filibuster, the president do away with the filibuster to codify Roe?
I'm not prepared to make those judgments now about, but you know, I think the codification of Roe makes a lot of sense. Look, think what Roe says. Roe says what all basic mainstream religions have historically concluded, that the existence of a human life and being is a question. Is it at the moment of conception? Is it 6 months? Is it 6 weeks? Is it quickening, like Aquinas argued? I mean, so the idea that we're going to make a judgment that is going to say that no one can make the judgment to choose to abort a child based on a decision by the Supreme Court, I think goes way overboard.
Thank you.
What does this mean for the midterms? What does this mean for the Democrats' argument in the midterms?
I haven't thought that through yet.
Do changes need to be made to the court in light of this if this decision holds?
I beg your pardon?
Do changes need to be made to the court in light of this if this decision
No, we just
holds?
have to choose it. I mean, look, one of the reasons why I voted against a number of the members in the court, they refused to acknowledge that there's a Ninth Amendment. They refused to acknowledge there's a right to privacy. I mean, there's so many fundamental rights that are affected by that, and I'm not prepared to leave that to the whims and the of the public at the moment in local areas. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Come on, guys.
Biden earlier, folks, that was President Biden earlier this afternoon, giving his assessment as to where we are with this whole situation of this leak, majority opinion that was leaked from Supreme Court of the United States, a majority opinion that leaned more toward the conservative side than the liberal side. And Justice Samuel Alito was the writer of this opinion, which is something that happens when Chief Justice Roberts, he gives he assigns certain justices to write the opinions on various court cases. But which Justice Alito put out there, he said this, Lise, Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. Its reasoning was exceptionally weak, and the decision has had damaging consequences. And far from bringing about a national settlement of the abortion issue, Roe and Casey have inflamed debate and deepened division.
I think that this issue, especially the abortion issue for Republicans, has been a hot button issue for a while. I think it was something that they could get their party to rally behind. And again, they do tend to push this as a states' rights issue. You know, this is the federal government taking over states' rights and all of these types of things. And so this concerns me because they do have a majority. It is more of a conservative court. We would be looking more at a 6-3. Now, whether or not we have some of the justices that decide, because that happened in 2012 with Obamacare, Justice Roberts decided at the last minute that he would support, the American healthcare. Let me not say Obamacare because that has negative connotations. The American Affordable Healthcare Act.
Right.
He decided at the last minute that he was going to change his mind. Now, I don't know. I think that, again, this is going to be one of those issues that is very divisive. Divisive. I think that Democrats have to be very, very careful here. But at the same time, you will motivate more people, especially women, to vote. You will get a lot more women out there voting to protect their rights on this issue and making sure that, although Joe Biden said that, this is something that is fundamentally protected under the 14th Amendment, but is it? Because for the longest time, you couldn't, it was illegal. So I think that this is something we do need to look at, because when you look at what happened before women had the right to choose, a lot of women, especially poor women who cannot afford abortion, because I think this is another issue that Republicans and conservatives tend to say, that this is a poor woman's issue, but you have to have, it's like $500 or something to even get an abortion. So a lot of the poorer women can't even afford to do this. So it's a lot of issues that we need to look into, not even just with making sure that women are protected and that women get the health care that they need and they have the right to choose. And the Constitution does give you that right in order to not have a state encroach on what you can do with your own body, but also making sure that if we do not have abortion, or you don't want abortion, what are we doing in order to help people be able to get contraceptives in this country? Because there are also rules on the books that if you are a religious employer, you do not have to provide that. And it just continues. So I will be very interested in seeing what happens in June and what the final decision will be.
It's going to be interesting too, Lise, to see if, now that they have this breach, if that decision will actually be made in June. That maybe, and that, the justices, by them hearing the feedback and the outcry from folks around the country, that may shift the conversation, that may shift their vote on this decision, right? But I think my biggest concern, and I know people are talking about, this could be an opportunity, quote unquote, for the Democrats. And I don't want to even think from that point of view, through that lens. For me, it fundamentally comes down to women's rights, right? I mean, it fundamentally comes down to this idea that the state or the government can tell a woman what she can and cannot do with her body. And I think that's in a day and time. Now, if this was, I don't want to say like the 1950s, culturally, that may have been acceptable, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is 2022. I mean, we don't, as men, the government, I could do whatever I want with my body as a man, right? Mm-hmm. I could do whatever I want with my reproductive organs as a man. But to not give that same opportunity, that same choice to women, it's mind-blowing. Here's my other concern. You got some real crazy people in positions of power in some of these states, right? So if it goes down to the state law, I mean, we always talk about Florida and Texas, right?
Right.
We always, I mean, do you want, I would not want my wife, my daughter, to be subjected to the reasoning and judgment of these crazy ass political leaders. I wouldn't want that. I'd be like, oh no, no, sir.
Right.
Whose view is so distorted and whose values are so far from my personal values. How can you?
Right.
And I'm just saying, how can you put it in the hands of elected representatives who have clearly shown that their interest is not to preserve life, or it is not in the interest of individuals, but their interest could be political. The interest could be financial. They could have stocks and in companies that companies can eat off of this. I mean, there's so many other things. So I mean, in 2022, we're still talking about a woman having full agency of her body.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is
It's just an easy issue for them to get votes. It's a religious hot button topic that will get Republicans fired up, because we're talking about Democrats, but this is what happens. Like, even when we had Joe Biden versus Trump, a lot of people like, oh, people are going to just go out in droves for Biden, and they're going to be, because we have the pandemic and, all of this stuff. And it was like, no, it fired up both bases. So I'm a little concerned, because Republicans, this is a big Republican traditional, this is a conservative issue. It has been for a long time. And so I am concerned that we might see even more conservatives come out to vote, just because this is something that they want to see passed. That's one of the reasons why Amy Coney Barrett got confirmed so quickly, right, is because they knew once they put her on, the bench, this is what was going to happen. Same thing with Brett Kavanaugh. So you have now this 6-3. I really don't know if the Democrats can use this to really fire up the base enough in order to actually win the election, to make sure that we have the laws on the books to protect, because this is something that we need to do. And you're seeing more Democrats now stepping out, like, Joe Biden, you need to do something, because the filibuster, and if they start to pass legislation to make sure that they protect women's reproductive rights, I'm almost certain they're going to use that in order to stop this legislation from being passed. So I'm concerned. And I think that most women, if you're watching this, or if you have a mother, a daughter, a sister, a cousin, any woman in your life, you should be concerned too.
I mean, look, the only group of people that can stop this are women. Look, I remember, and we're going to take a quick pause after this really quickly. I remember going to the Million Women March, like right after President Trump was elected. Was it the day after? And I'm not even joking. I've never seen that many women galvanized and organized in the streets the way I saw at that march. Never seen it. I've been at the Million Man March, so I've seen large crowds. But when I saw the women and how fired up they were, Lise, and they had their little hats and they was chanting, and Nira was there, and she chanting, and I'm chanting, and I'm like, man. And I'm seeing, and I know that a lot of people might say, oh, that really wasn't a march representative of us as Black women, boom, boom, boom. But not getting into that. I'm just talking about just the fact that you had all of these white women, Black women, Asian, Latinos, Native American. You had women from all over the country, all around the world, and the fact that it was all happening not just in DC and cities across the country and around the globe, it was a wake-up call. I was like, no, you can't put this genie back in the bottle, baby. This thing is out. You know what I mean? And I heard the speakers and everything, and just feeling the energy. Nah, women in this country, whether you're Black or white, Asian, Latino, women in this country is the last group of people you want to just screw over, for lack of a better word, right? Y'all got so much power. Mm-hmm. And we know the power that women have played in getting Trump elected, and certainly know the power that women have played in getting President Biden elected. But I know that the real game changer is going to be women. That's it. And the men, those of us who stand in alignment and as allies and as supporters, we stand to the back. But this thing is going to come down to women saying enough is enough. Women have to fight against this. A man should not be able to tell a woman how to do the decisions about her body, like whether she can do this or do that. That's not our place.
Agreed.
Our place. You know what I mean?
Definitely should have the choice.
You educate the woman about the value and the beauty of her body, so that way she can make better decisions. But you don't mandate that in a policy and say, no, we're going to take agency over your body. And because if I don't have that mandate on my body, that's not fair. That's not fair. Look, we're going to take a quick pause. When we come right back, folks, we're going to continue the conversation. We're going to check in with Andrea Jones, who is an author and a women's rights advocate, to talk to us about the implication of this opinion. Again, this is just a draft, folks, so this has not been made into law, but the possible implications of this opinion on the reproductive rights movement and on women in general. So stay with us. We still got a lot to get to. It's the culture here on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
It's time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared. You dig?
Folks, we have been talking about the Supreme Court leaked document, this majority opinion, a draft of a majority opinion that was written by Justice Samuel Alito. And in this majority opinion, it circulated inside the court. However, some way, somehow, this opinion was leaked to the public. Politico was the first outlet to report on this, and then others started to look at it. The draft, in fact, is authentic, folks. So there are a lot of concerns about the level of security of decisions and of documents of this sensitivity. And so Chief Judge Roberts has decided to launch an investigation into understanding what has happened, why this egregious security breach, as he calls it, even took place. But along with that, now that it is out, so many people are wondering if the 49-year-old precedent of Roe v. Wade will be overturned by this Supreme Court in 2022. And so we're talking about the implications of all of this and looking at how this will not just affect women's rights, the movement around women's rights, but also affect the state's power to make decisions on the behalf of women. We wanted to bring in another voice. We're first joined by our culture crew member, Lise Winnie, who serves as the host of Millennials Anonymous podcast. So, Lise, again, thank you so much for joining us. And now we're also going to be joined by Andrea Jones, who is an author and she is a women's rights advocate here in Baltimore. Andrea, thank you so much for joining us. How are you this afternoon?
I'm well. I promise you I'm going to park in just a second.
You're going to park. It's all good. It's all good. It's all good. But we wanted to talk about this because, of course, there are so many dynamics at play here, not just the security breach, not even just the fact that this could be, quote unquote, an opportunity, political opportunity for Democrats, considering that a majority of the justices are conservative. But this right here, this whole idea that the state can have agency over women's body. And and Andrea, something is very, very wrong about this. This just sounds crazy. It sounds like something from Handmaid's Tale or something, right? Like being able to like determine what happens. Even one of our watchers on YouTube, made the point that, men have always been making decisions on about women for women. And since the majority of the justices on the court are men, women are at a deficit. This is coming from, I believe, one of our favorite watchers, Janae. So it's like we're still in this space. And I'm wondering, Andrea, what do we do with this? What do you see happening? How do we make sure that women's choice stays where it is and it's not disrupted?
I feel like Texas started it, right?
We're going back to that damn Texas again, boy.
So Texas started it, and there was another state, I believe it was Oklahoma, that they were following right behind Texas trail, with getting rid of abortion rights in general. So Texas sparked that, and I think that just kind of set it off. And now we've got this domino effect. But I will say that it creates a lot of controversy, not just with women's bodies, but also in families, in homes, and in other situations, because we're speaking about now women who desperately want to get an abortion have to go to seek great measures to actually get an abortion. So they're either going to have to travel abroad, travel to another state that legalizes it, or they're ordering pills to have an abortion from another country.
Wow.
All of which isn't probably FDA approved to begin with, because you're ordering it from another country. So now you're talking about something even greater. So you're talking about traveling, and you're talking about families who may not be able to afford to travel to another state. When you think about a state as large as Texas, you can drive 4 hours and still be in Texas, baby. You can just,
right.
Texas is Texas. Texas wants to be their own country anyway. So,
right.
But you're talking about so families who may not have the financial means to actually travel across state lines to get this type of care and procedure done that they choose is best for their body or their family or their lifestyle or what have you. Oftentimes we don't think about, we speak about the woman's body, but we don't speak about how this also impacts the man as well. That to me, it also sends off a notion in my head of, dang, how many men or families that are not together, or people that are not together, are now going to be looking at child support and who's going to take the responsibility for this child that we didn't necessarily maybe try to bring purposely. My grandmother always says if you wasn't trying to prevent it, you was trying. But we weren't necessarily trying to have it. We didn't want necessarily to bring into this world. And we may have had an oops, or it may be trigger warning for some people. They may have, it may be their rapist's child. Like that's now you're talking about how I deal with those traumas. Now we're looking at how many children are in the system and the foster care system, and we're looking at a bigger issue than just women's bodies. We're looking at child support, children that are in the foster care system, and now we're triggering also just health in general.
So I mean, Lise, when we talk about, it's like a spider, right? It's like a spider web type of situation where it starts from just one thing and then it goes all out. And I appreciate, Andrea, that you made the point that this also affects men in some way. So when we look at this situation, and when I'm thinking about the fact that, we're in a different culture, there's a much different level of conversation that's happening about gender, reproduction, and rights. in all of those fronts, Lise. And so how do you think this will fit into that? Because abortion has been seen as a women's issue. But now if the states, it opens up the door to a conversation I don't even know if people can truly understand and manage.
Yeah.
Am I thinking too deep into this? I mean, tell me if I'm wrong on this, Lise.
No, I think that it's hard because I was reading an article from a medical doctor who actually was practicing before Roe v. Wade, which she was saying like a lot of people, because the average age of doctors is like the age of 51. So they don't even know a world before Roe v. Wade. So, you know, we're looking at people, and when you look at men and women being impacted and affected, you're absolutely right. It will impact men just in a different way than women, but it will still impact men. And then you also have to understand that, you know, trans men also fall into this category of also being impacted. So this is a people issue, not just a women's issue or women's rights issue. And I think that we do need to look at that. And what does that look like on the system if you have so many people? 14% of all pregnancies are unwanted. So what happens to those babies once they get here? Will they be put into, like she said, into the foster care system? What will we do? Will there be more aid for them? Because one of the things that I noticed that the Republican Party is really, really good at is getting people to vote. Like, I would say that Ronald Reagan is probably like the father of the pro-life movement, because right around that time you started hearing pro-life, and then that became a whole thing, and you started
I think some people would even go that far to say he's like the father of modern day conservatism.
Yeah. So I would say that that really was what tipped it to get him elected. Like, you know, people really, really followed behind that. We had Nancy Reagan was at a pro-life rally. You know, all of these things kind of fall into the place of how does this impact us as a whole in the world? And you're right, it's going to impact the medical system, because when I was reading that article from the doctor, she said all of the women that were taking turpentine and using clothes hangers and all of these types of things in order to get rid of these unwanted children, and some of these women died or had really, really bad medical issues. Like, what are we doing to prevent this from happening? No one is thinking about that. All of the children, unwanted children that'll be here, the children that stay with parents that don't want them. How are we handling this? And what does that look like down the road? I think you're absolutely correct when you say that it's a bigger issue than what people see on the surface.
No doubt. And I'm wondering, Andrea, it's you know, there's this stance that you could pro-life or pro-choice, but it's not that easy. It's not that black and white. Like, you know, oftentimes when I hear people say it's about pro-choice, they use rape as the example. You know, if a woman is raped, she should have the choice of whether she keeps that baby or not. You know, we often hear that side. Then the pro-life is, well, you know, what, as President Biden say, and others have said, you know, what do we consider to be life, you know, at the moment of conception and all of those things. But it still feels like culturally there are still some things that needs to be resolved, because, you know, you have people's religious views that plays into how they think around this issue. Of course, their community views around this issue. But then if and I'm gonna have to say it, like, if some people feel like women, today's woman is not necessarily equipped emotionally, mentally, to make sound decisions about her body. Now, I'm not trying to throw shade on any woman, but I've heard those type of conversations that a woman, she doesn't know what's best for her, essentially, right? Or women they sleep, you know, they look at some type of women and say, oh, they sleep around so much that they just don't care. So I'm trying to figure out, how do we start to bridge the gap, and how do we start to, you know, respect a woman's choice and hope that she makes the best decision without impeding upon or imposing upon her own intellectual capabilities to do that, to make that decision.
I think the only way to do that is to leave Roe versus Wade where it is, and just allow a woman to just make that decision. And you know, I'm actually one of those persons who's a firm believer on both parties agreeing and not just a woman just agreeing. Because I again, you know, I'm an advocate of yes, it's a woman's body. However, it still impacts emotionally, psychologically someone else. So it also impacts someone else. So I think just leaving Roe versus Wade where it is just leave it where it is. I think it's funny to me, and I use funny lightly. I think it's ironic how those persons who are so in favor of being pro-lifers, as I don't really like the term, but as pro-lifers, they're also that, you know, they're the ones that are like, well, you know, the baby has a heartbeat. Who's gonna be a voice for that child? The parent, the person that's carrying that child, the person that has to endure that pregnancy or that the next 18 plus years, that person. However, it also is keeping in mind those are the same persons that don't want them to be a part of the system and don't want to see the taxes increase, because I don't want to see my tax dollars going to help your child because you need assistance from the government. But yet I don't think that you should get an abortion either.
Right.
Pick one, Nancy, because I don't know. You gotta pick one. You can't sit on the fence with this one. And so this is one of those things where just leave it where it is. One of the biggest things that you probably have touched on already is just how this leak just happened. It happened.
Leaked. It has to happen. It happened during an election year, Andrea.
It just gotta leak. All of a sudden, there's a leak in this old building. It's just a leak, right? I don't like it. Like, everything is done for a reason. And it's just, of course, it's going to be this topic. That's just like, it's also interesting because this is one of those topics where we have a president, and I'm speaking for myself, not for any organization that I am associated with, that we have a president who had a different view some years ago as a senator. He has a different view now as a president, but I'm going to let that be.
Right.
Joe Biden. Go ahead. But Joe Biden has been a high amendment supporter. He believes that you should not use federal funding. He actually has not changed his stance on abortion really at all. He still has this and that's why I said I'm a little concerned, because, you know, more Democrats are pushing back like, hey, we need to put some legislation in place, because if we don't on the federal level, if you leave it where it is, you're still going to constantly have this push and pull between the states and the federal government about every couple of years. We're going to say, should abortion be the woman's right to choose, or family's right to choose whether or not they have children or not? And so I think that Joe Biden has always kind of had this middle of the road stance on it, because he's Catholic, and he said he grew up as a Catholic, and that is what they believe, that abortion is wrong. And so he, even to this day, he said it, like, he believes that abortion is wrong, but he said that he doesn't want to impose his faith on anyone else. Yeah. So how hard we are in a very, very tricky place with abortion right now, because now, again, like you said, midterms are coming. What do the Democrats do about this? Yes, this will get people charged up, but like you said, a lot of people don't realize the ramification. A lot of people don't understand how much this will impact them, what it looks like to not have legal abortions, what this will look like to taxes, what this looks like to the medical system. People don't realize that. So would it? And then you also have to have the Republicans on the other side. Everyone that, when this came out, there were a lot of senators when this leak happened, which is not the first time a Roe versus Wade leak has happened. Mm-hmm. They were happy about this. They were praising this. I don't know who leaked it or why. We probably will find out someday. But I'm a little concerned that this could lean the other way, where maybe this charges Republicans up on this issue and they get out to vote in large numbers in order to make sure that this is overturned. I'm concerned.
I'm concerned about that too. I'm concerned about that. And here's the other thing that I'm concerned about is that culturally, people, and I've seen women, and unfortunately, I know women who have made this decision that they used abortion like birth control. Like they're going out, they're having intimate relations with individuals, and then, they not just have one abortion, they have 2 abortions. Some of them have 3 abortions. And I'm thinking to myself, like, damn, like this is not going to do well on your body, for one. But then 2, it's like culturally, there needs to be a shift, because we are such a hypersexual, we live in a hypersexual culture that it removes a proper judgment from one's thinking on how to make such an important decision.
I don't know if it's sexualization that's the problem. I think maybe because if you're talking about women that use birth control, I've heard people say that, but I don't know any women personally that have used it in that way, because it's it's not necessarily,
it's not an easy decision.
Not an easy decision to make.
I'm not saying it is.
And so I think that most women don't do that. Are there some exceptions to the rule? Yes. I think it does have to deal with how we deal with sex. First of all, in school, they teach you abstinence, to abstain. For the longest time, it was abstention from sex. That is what they taught you. It reminds me
all been taught that.
Right. It reminds me of DARE, because the DARE program put more people on drugs than it took them off. This is the same thing that the school system did with sex. I think that we need to be more open with it. This is what contraception is, and this is how you get it. This is how it works. Nothing is 100% foolproof.
I remember going through that.
It's still was.
Check this out. You got that, and then Andrea, on the flip side, you turn on the radio. You popping it. You dropping it. You rocking and rolling it. And I'm not trying to make light of the situation. I'm just simply saying, what message do you think is going to really come across to a little young sister or a little brother? The one from his teacher, or the one that's coming from his culture?
Here's the thing: that culture has to also include their family, their system,
all right,
their circle. Their culture just can't be the music and media. It has to include their village. What are my parents teaching me? What are my grandparents teaching me?
And I'm saying everybody got a village, but does your village add to, or does it take away from who you trying to be?
For some people, that's different. Some people don't realize that their village is taking away to begin with. That's
right. Facts.
That's a fact.
But I will say that there are states, I think there were about 14 to 17, doesn't outweigh the amount that so far that are more in favor of getting rid of Roe versus Wade. But there are about 14 to 17 states who have like a backup plan to be like, listen, it's still pro-choice over here, okay? But it's still a lot. It's more states that are like, no, we're going with what they say. And then you've got this amount of states where soon as it's abolished, it's in effect, like tonight, like it's today.
Right.
That's a scary thing. It's a very scary thing. And I just want to go back to what Leash said. Like, you have to consider the way that women would, the extremes that women would have to go through to have an abortion. The extremes, the great lengths that someone would physically put their body through in order to not go through with the pregnancy. It's a scary world that we're going to live in if that's the case.
Absolutely. And
not to mention the psychological aspect of all of it. That's not. It's for the average woman. I don't believe that's an easy decision. It's just not.
Agreed.
I agree. And that's another part of it, which is you got the cultural side, then you have the psychological, mental, spiritual side of things, where we don't really speak about that. We don't speak about the pain that a woman may feel after she goes through that procedure, or the feeling of like she has lost a part of herself. I do know a couple of sisters that have shared that, like the remorse and regret that they have felt after
It
have
will eat
their
at
abortion.
you. It will
Say it
eat
again.
at you day, night, weekly. It will eat at you. It will eat at you.
Wow.
That date will come around. That clinic you will drive past. That all of that will trigger you at some point in life. It is not an easy decision, and I think that's the thing. People who are pro-lifers just think that it's for a lot of women, maybe it's just an easy decision. It's not. You can't. First of all, y'all don't know everybody,
Right.
so
Right.
it's just not. I don't believe that it truly is.
Right. Here's the other thing, and as we wrap up this conversation, and Lisa and Andrea, I appreciate y'all so much. But look, I wanted to share this thing that there was a national survey that was done by ABC News and the Washington Post. They found that majority of Americans actually support upholding Roe v. Wade. In this poll, by contrast, 57% of Americans oppose a ban after 15 weeks. 58% say abortion should be legal in all or most cases. 54% say the court should uphold Roe, compared with 28% who say the ruling should be overturned. Supporting, and then they said moving the question outside of a legal framework, 7 in 10 say the decision whether or not a woman can have an abortion should be left to the woman and to her doctor. So you got a vast majority of people who are like, should be upheld. We should keep it. Women should have the power to make their own decisions with their doctors. And then you have this coming out. And so I'm wondering, looking at even looking at the reasoning and the thoughts behind Justice Alito's decision, like, I'm wondering how that's going to be reconciled, that you have an unfavorable view of such a highly controversial issue and in a very politically charged environment and landscape that we're in right now. I'm just wondering how this thing is all going to play out over the next couple of months. Lise, what's your take on that?
I'm interested, but if we're going to say it, let's say it right. That's Gorsuch, Coney Barrett, Kavanaugh, and Thomas. Yeah. They also agree with this opinion. So my thing is that this is a poll. The poll's been wrong. Like, they've been wrong, child. Like, I don't know what kind of polls they have going on, but they've been so wrong. So my concern again is that, like, it's a congresswoman who said that even rape, in the case of rape, you should not have access to it on abortion. She said it's an opportunity for women in order to have this baby and raise this baby in the world. I do not know what state she is from, but she is a sitting congresswoman. These are the types of things that concern me, because these are the people are in power. And although the people may be, this is what the polls say, this is not how they vote. And so we continuously see the same people in office. So I'm concerned, and we need to definitely pay attention to this one.
We're going to definitely keep our eyes open. I want to have more conversations around this personally, because I feel like we're just kind of hitting the tip of the iceberg here. And I think, to both of your points, you're saying, look, it's not just about abortion. It's not just about rape. It's not just about, choice and life. It's so many other things. And so we're talking about fundamentally how this could change the dynamic. We haven't talked about the fact that Black women may be told to abort their babies at a higher rate than white women. We haven't talked about that. We talked a little bit about the toll that abortion can make on a body, but then if a woman decides to, if she's in a better circumstance that she wants to have a child, is that even possible? And if it's not possible, will she be afforded alternative opportunities or alternative ways to conceive? So, I mean, you still have those big questions still kind of like lingering and pending around this issue. But we're certainly going to keep our eyes on it. Andrea Jones, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And most importantly, your insight and analysis. We will certainly bring you back on to continue this conversation.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, we're going to shift gears. Let's talk about appraisal. I'm going to check in with the American Society of Appraisers, the CEO, Mr. Johnnie White, to talk to us about how do you make sure that your personal belongings stay at a value that you know that they should be. We're going to talk about that and the issue, if there are any issues with race and in terms of appraising your personal belongings and other necessities. So we'll have that conversation. And then later, let's talk a little bit about what's happening around this issue of performative gestures or effective activism. I'm going to tell you what people have did at this past Met Gala this past weekend. And I'm just throwing it out there. Me and Lisa are going to have a conversation about it. Like, do you use your big platform to just make a word or to speak a message? And if so, how do you make sure that message comes across the way you want it to come across? We'll have that discussion. And of course, Trends, Posts, and Doing the Most. So stay with us. A lot coming up in the second hour of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, welcome to the second half of today's show. Thank you so much for tuning into The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Let's talk a little bit about appraisals, folks. We know that appraisals is always a point of contention, especially in America. When we think about real estate, one of the big issues facing real estate developers and agents is the fact that we're finding more and more that Black folks, Black homeowners or home buyers or Black people that want to go and buy property owners, that they're given and told a totally different number compared to what the value of that property, the value of that home is, or for their personal belongings if they're trying to sell something. And this is an ongoing issue facing not just homeowners and property owners, but this is also something that's facing appraisers. And so we wanted to have a conversation around this issue with the CEO of the American Society of Appraisers, which is a nonprofit organization that serves as a professional affiliation for appraisers. So we want to welcome Mr. Johnnie White into the conversation. Mr. White, thank you so much for checking in and being a part of this discussion with us this afternoon. How are you, sir?
I am very well. Thank you for having me.
Good. Appreciate yes, sir. Absolutely. Mr. White, let's look at this. I mean, I'm sure you probably have heard the horror stories when it comes to appraising anything, whether it's property, real estate, cars, whatever the case may be. First and foremost, tell us about what the role is for ASA, the American Society of Appraisers.
Absolutely. And I appreciate giving me the opportunity to talk about ASA. So ASA, American Society of Appraisers, is an organization that represents many different classes of appraisers. Most individuals know the appraisers, such as a real property appraiser. These are individuals that appraise homes, and that could be residential or commercial. But we, as an organization, provide the designation for other appraisers, which include real property appraisers, as stated, business valuation appraisers. So these are individuals where if you were buying a company, merging with a company, or selling a company, they would come in and appraise that business for you. We have machine and equipment appraisers. These are individuals that are appraising from construction equipment to yachts to corporate planes, anything that's machinery, they're going to appraise that. We have personal property appraisers, and these are individuals that's going to appraise pretty much those things that you may own as a personal asset, which could be art, furniture, coins, stamps, comic books, any of those things that are personal properties, they're going to appraise that. Gem and jewelry appraisers, again, that's pretty simple. They appraise everything that's a gem and jewelry, from diamonds to rubies to necklaces, rings, and so forth. And then we also have what we call appraiser review managers, and these are individuals that work in banks or insurance companies, and they're the ones that's reviewing the appraisal report that may come in for that loan or may come in for an insurance claim to ensure that everything is appropriate. So these 6 different, what we call disciplines, make up our organization, and we're the ones that provide the designation and education to these individuals so that they're out there appraising appropriately.
And first and foremost, Mr. White, I have to say this is so needed that there is a professional organization, there's a professional affiliation. This is not a union, but it certainly helps to bring some level of accountability to the profession, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And we, becoming a member of our organization, there's a number of guidelines that they have to follow. First of all, they have to go through our coursework to ensure that, we want to make sure that they know what they're doing. And then they also have to submit an appraisal report at the end of they completing their coursework to determine, again, that they know what they're doing, because we don't want anybody that's out there that has our designation isn't doing the right thing. And then in addition to that, they also have to follow the standards. There's USPAP is a standard in the US that they have to follow. So every 2 years, they have to ensure that they have taken the most updated USPAP. And then we also have them do an ethics test to make sure that they are doing things ethically. Now, if our members do anything that's inappropriate, that can jeopardize their membership with the organization.
There was a report, Mr. White, that came out back in 2018, at the end of 2018, that said that 85% of appraisers nationwide were white. And this is a report from the Appraisal Institute. 85% of appraisers were white, while less than 2% identified as Black. Are you familiar with that report?
Oh, I am. And actually, that number is a little higher than that. It's in the 90s.
On Black or white?
On white, unfortunately, on white. So there's the last number that I saw that the Appraisal Foundation had put out was about 95% of the practice is white, and then a small percentage African American, and then a smaller percentage would be Hispanic and Asian.
So how does that happen, Mr. White? How do you get such a disparity in an industry like appraising? Because I know we bring so much to the table. I'm speaking of Black men, Black women. We bring intellect, we bring the math, we bring the science, we bring so much to the table. But and we don't often talk about this industry. We talk about a lot of other industries, but we don't. It still seems like we have to break through some glass ceilings in the appraisal industry to be seen, heard, and understood. Is that what I'm understanding?
There is definitely an issue in this area, and we all recognize this. The profession recognizes this, and we're trying to do things in order to change this process. So there is what we found is some obstacles in reference to obstacles in terms of entry into this profession. Right now, the guideline is that you have to get a supervisor. And the supervisor could only take up to 3 individuals. So, having that in mind, and you think about the profession as it is today, and they are asked to go and get, these individuals to come in to supervise. Well, they're not as open to supervising, unfortunately, those that don't necessarily look like them. So we're looking at ways to change those obstacles and change the requirements in reference to getting into this industry. Now we're at the beginning stages here in terms of trying to figure out, but there are some tools or some programs. The foundation put out a program called PERIA. It's providing a different way of training. So you don't necessarily have to have a supervisor that you're working with for all the hours that are required to get the profession. You can go through what they have designed as a simulation, just like a pilot. When they go through the process of becoming a pilot, there's simulation that's associated with that. Well, this program is going to be similar to that, where you go through some simulation. So you don't necessarily need that supervisor. And the way this program works, the individual that's running the PERIA program, they can have 5 to 8 trainees rather than currently what we have in the system, where you have to have only 3 people per supervisor. So again, we're trying to find ways to alleviate these obstacles for entry so that we can have more of a diverse profession and more people will be able to get in.
So talk to us, Mr. White, about some of the appraisal issues that we're seeing in housing, for example. I mean, I'm hearing the stories, I'm reading the reports, and I'm finding that there was one report that was from the Center for Public Integrity. They said that home ownership appraisals are Black homeowners. Their property, their homes are appraised at a much lower value, at least by 23%, than whites. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so this is part of the systemic racism that we keep talking about. This is part of the untangible challenge that we're seeing. How is the ASA working to change that dynamic?
Yeah, so there's a lot to uncover here, and I'm seeing the same stories. Unfortunately, you hear African American families having to, and I use the term, whitewash their homes. Remove any pictures or anything that identifies them as African Americans, and when they do that, the value goes up. Now, these are stories that we're seeing in different news outlets and so forth. The one thing that we need is more data. There has been some data out there. Freddie Mac did something, and a few other organizations have done something, but we need more and more data on this to really hone in on the issue. But one of the things, or some of the things that ASA is doing, is we're looking at taking it from an educational standpoint. And what I mean by that, and we've done a series of these programs so far, where we are training our appraisers to understand the unconscious bias that they bring to the table. All of us have some type of bias, but we need to recognize what that bias is. And once we recognize that bias, we can make the appropriate changes to do the right thing. And so our take and our way of approaching this is, again, training the profession to understand what unconscious bias is, understand their unconscious bias, so that when they're providing their service, they understand what that bias they bring to the table and can make some changes to that bias. So that's kind of what we've been focused on in reference to helping this industry a little bit better with dealing with what we're seeing in the news today.
And how much, as a result of the fact that you have bias and discrimination when it comes to appraising, how much money is essentially left on the table for Black homeowners, black property owners, compared to white homeowners and white property owners?
Right, and I can't necessarily say, because again, we need more data. But again, as I've seen stories where the value of the home between two appraisers can range from $25,000 up to $100,000. Again, these are just stories that I'm seeing in the news.
Right.
But we got to look at more of the data to really get the true understanding of that. But that's what I'm seeing in the news today.
Wow. I want to bring our Culture Crew member, Lise Winnie, back into the conversation. Lise is the host of Millennials Anonymous podcast. Lise, what's your question for Mr. White, or your thoughts? There we go. You're on mute.
Is there a better time to get an appraisal? Like right now, inflation is crazy. So are there certain times where you should get an appraisal and other times where you kind of should hold off or wait?
That is a good question. I mean, right now, as the value of assets are through the roof. And what I mean by that, so there's a huge supply and demand. I mean, let's look at the simple thing that probably everyone knows right now: used cars. Right now, that there was a time when you drove off the lot. As soon as you drove off the lot, it would depreciate. But now that car is probably worth the same amount that you purchased or even more. So
wow.
If you're in a situation right now where you're looking to bring some additional cash in, this would probably be the time. Again, depending on the asset. And what I mean by asset is the product or the property that you own. Looking at things that are in demand. So again, using another example, right now, again, for the high wealth individual that own corporate planes, it is hard to get a new plane right now. So if you're looking to, make a transition there, you can probably sell that plane that you bought 2 years ago for, 25 to 30% more than you purchased a couple of years ago, because that's in the high demand. So you have to look at your asset, see what's the demand on that asset, and you may find that the value of that asset is much more than it is now. Now, in reference to housing, that was last 18 months was the time to sell because people were looking to buy homes. I mean, with what happened in the pandemic, everybody wanted to make some transitions. So those that were living in the city and apartments were like, you know what, I can work remotely. Let me find a home out in the suburbs. So that created a demand. And that's why you saw a lot of the values of the homes increase as you started to look at the suburbs. And the interest rate was down. Now, as we've seen, the interest rates are starting to go up. So you're not seeing that bubble like you just saw, over the last 18 months. So from a property standpoint, home property, that's going to probably change over time because of that interest rate. But again, other assets, you look at what's the demand out there. The value has gone up for a number of those assets because of the demand that we see.
So that demand is that demand is still high right now.
Yeah, it depends on the asset, but yes, there's demand on a number of items out there at this time because there's short supply of that asset, and it could be for multiple reasons. Again, what we're seeing from the economy standpoint, some of these things are being affected by the war. So again, you have to do some research on your asset. And then again, if you see that there's demand, then probably there's going to be some increased value for that asset that you have.
So, and Lee's jump in any time. But so, Mr. White, when we're talking about like personal assets, like what is the stuff that is considered to be the most valuable of personal assets versus something that's not quite as valuable? Are we talking about like paintings, or we're talking about, heirlooms or some type of antique? What's the most valuable personal asset?
That is a good question. It varies from year to year. I mean, to be honest,
really,
yeah, it really depends on the demand of the market.
Okay,
it depends on who wants that asset, and that's going to push the demand on that. I mean, so it varies from year to year, from season to season, unfortunately.
So do you advise or recommend that people go to an appraiser or go to a pawn shop?
Well,
I mean, I'm just asking. You know what I mean? Some people strap for cash, Mr. White.
Well, being the CEO of ASA, I would say they go to an appraiser. And I will say that they go to a designated appraiser, an individual that has gone through the process of getting their designation, because they're going to give you the real deal on what the value of that asset's going to be. But I would definitely always say go to an appraiser rather than going to a pawn shop, because the pawn shop doesn't have and I'm not taking anything away from the pawn shops, but they just don't have the qualifications to get that true value of that asset like a qualified appraiser would.
Yeah.
Is there ever a time where a high appraisal can get you in trouble? Like, because if your house appraises for more, especially in this market, could you be in a in a negative situation if you get a high appraisal and that's not necessarily what the bank is saying it's worth?
Yes. Yeah. No, very, very, very good question. And, if we think back in the late 2000s, when we had that housing bubble, that was an issue back then where the value of the homes were more than what they were actually worth. And that was a different situation because the banks gave loans to these individuals for this, high value that they were getting from an appraisal standpoint. Yeah. And then, the balloon popped and everybody had these homes that weren't worth as much as they state they were. So that changed a number of things in the appraisal practice to ensure that we never went down that path again. I mean, they started to put in some regulations and guidelines there where there's some separation between the appraiser and the lender. So there was no conflict there and that sort of thing. But today, as you asked the question, could you be in trouble that, your house values at this much, but then let's say the loan is going to be higher or less than that. In those scenarios, what I always tell anyone is a couple of things you could do there. One is, if you're in that situation, go back to the appraiser and have them relook at the appraiser. Maybe there's some things that they miss. Appraiser will do that. They'll take some information from the homeowner and may do some reassessments, or they can go get another appraiser report just to get a comparison of it to ensure that that value was correct, and then they can go back to the bank and talk about that. So that's one thing that we have to tell the consumers. You do have the right to ask questions. I mean, let's think about personal health. When you're going to a physician and you get a diagnosis, and let's say you don't like that diagnosis, you can question that physician, or you can go to another physician and get another diagnosis. So it's definitely okay to do the same thing in this profession too.
And Mr. White, talk to us about making those type of decisions, especially when we're talking about homes, like what should be considered when making those decisions. Like you might see a home that you love, but then it might be in a community that is not loved, right? It might not be. It might be in a community where the values of homes are not as high as the actual home that you're looking to. So, there's still, it seems like there's a battle between the mind and the heart that's at play here when you're talking about going into a home or buying a car or, acquiring some asset. Talk to us about like understanding the full picture and not just that one item.
Yeah, I would tell any consumer as they're looking at homes or purchasing anything of wealth, is do your research. Okay, let's use your example there. You see this beautiful home that you want to purchase, but let's say the neighborhood doesn't seem like it kind of fits that home. Well, you could take the opportunity to do some research on multiple levels. Look at what's happening with the city in terms of investments, because you may find that the city may be looking at doing some investments in that area. Such as schools, putting money into the schools there, or looking at what type of deals that may be happening with companies. I mean, there could be a possibility that a huge supermarket's coming in from Walmart to Target and so forth, and what that says is that area is going to change over time.
Right.
So that investment that you have is going to be valued even more as you see more investments into that neighborhood. So the advice there is you'll look at the future planning of that neighborhood, and that's going to help you determine if you want to purchase that home in that area.
Is appraisal only relegated to ownership? Can it happen through if you're like renting something?
No, it's just the ownership.
Just through ownership. Okay. Yeah,
just the ownership.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, this is fascinating, Lise, that we, getting this type of information, because I don't think a lot of people understand like the just how value of something is determined. Like I know for me, when I go to, when we went to buy our car or we looking for homes, we were like, how does this work out here? You know what I mean? Somebody's telling us the value of the car, and nobody has never told us, Mr. White, when y'all drive off that lot, the value of the car might actually stay the same. Nobody never told me that. So you need to be a car salesman, sir, and not an appraiser.
We are in a special time right now because of the demand. It's a lot of the manufacturers are having problems getting the employees. I mean, we're seeing now a lot of employees not going back to work and so forth. So they're having shortage on the employees, and then they're having shortage on the equipment. Again, this war that's happening is having some issues with some of the chips and some of vehicles and so forth. So that says that there's a shortage in new cars coming out. So if you're looking for a car right now, you're either going to pay a very high price because it's not as many cars, or you're going to go find a used car. And because there's a lot of used cars out there, a lot of people are demanding to get those used cars, and that's what's increasing the value. But this is unique. I mean, we haven't seen a time like this where you find used cars appreciating rather than depreciating.
Yeah, I would definitely say that this is a very unique time. At least any other questions for Mr. White?
I guess if you're looking for an appraiser, is there a certain place that you would recommend people go? And are there certain acronyms that we should look for when looking for an appraiser or background?
Absolutely. I would say, if you're ever looking for an appraiser, and as I stated earlier, all the different appraisers that we represent. And one of the things I'll say about ASA, we're very unique because we're the only organization that represents all these different disciplines of appraisers. But if you're ever looking for an appraiser, I would recommend you come to our website. It's appraisers.org. Again, appraisers.org. And on that website, we have a tool called Find an Appraiser. And you could go in and put, the asset that you want to be appraised, that you put in your zip code, put in your state, and it will give you all the appraisers that are in your area in order for them to, for you to call them and say, hey, I have this asset to appraise. So I would recommend coming to our website. And then the things that you're looking for in an appraiser, 3 things that you should be asking them: their experience, their education, and do they have a designation? And again, I would recommend an ASA designation because that's the designation that we give. If you find that they have the experience, they have the education, and they have the designation, then you've hit a home run because you have an individual that really understands this profession, understands how to provide that appraisal service because they're keeping up with all the different standards and guidelines that are out there.
Folks, again, the website is appraisers.org. The CEO is Mr. Johnnie White. Take a look here, folks, and you can see the website. It's up there, right there in the corner. Right where the gold is, you see Find an Appraiser. I'm looking at the website as well. A lot of great information on how you can find an appraiser for your property, your personal assets, your home. All types of information is being shared on this website. Mr. White, I appreciate you, sir, for taking time out your busy schedule to talk to us about this important issue, something that we often don't think about. But then when it's necessary, we like scrambling to try to figure out how to make happen.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate you for sharing your time and your insight and your knowledge with us today.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. You have a great show here. And I caught a little bit of your previous hour. You're talking about some good topics here. So I'm glad I was being part of that.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, sir, for checking in with us.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, folks. Again, if you want to get more information about the American Society of Appraisers, check out appraisers.org. All right, folks, we're going to take another quick pause. When we come back, let's talk about effective activism or performative gestures. When we get a platform, or when celebrities get a platform and they want to make a statement, how they make a statement is always the big challenge. And I'm going to share with you how 2 people try to make a statement at the same event and how they got different results. We'll have that conversation. And of course, we got trends posting doing the most. So stay with us. A lot coming at you for the final 30 of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
It's time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
No punches.
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Wow. Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
You dig?
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.
Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. And we got something to talk about, which I've been kind of excited to talk about, especially with Lise here, who serves as the host of Millennial Anonymous podcast. Lise, let's bring you back into the picture. Here's what I think is interesting. This is an interesting conversation, and I know, Lise, you are so critical in your thinking, Lise, that you would appreciate this. So I was reading a piece about how New York City Mayor Eric Adams went to the Met Gala. Mm-hmm. This is the big, I don't know how to really express this. It's like the Met is, how would you call the Met Gala, Lise? How would you describe it?
It's the fashions world's expression of art in seasons or themes, is how I would express it.
I'm gonna have you write my script next. All right, so Mayor Eric Adams went to the Met Gala. Of course, this is attended by political officials, because most people think it's just about celebrities. And AOC, as she's known by, but Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she made the point last year when she went to the Met Gala that she goes to the Met Gala because she is a political leader, and it's in New York City, which she represents. Why not?
Right.
Makes sense to me. So she went to the Met Gala, and last year she decided to use that platform to make a statement, and she wore this. Check this out. Look at Keena. Let's put what she wore to the Met Gala up. Now on her dress, folks, it has this this saying that she's put out. She kind of like branded it: "Tax the rich."
Yeah,
I think it's interesting. Tax the rich, right?
Mm-hmm.
She actually has a own clothing line around this whole statement, tax the rich. Like she offers, like she sells sweatshirts and some other clothing items, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some people say it's a little bit more expensive that only rich people can buy it, but it's fashion. It's neither here or there. I can't get into that part of the conversation, right? But it's interesting that she uses that space because she knows she's going to get pictures to make this message. So then that was last year. Then Mayor Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, he decided to get a message across by wearing this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, of course, he's talking about ending gun violence. He has the N-Train logo on there, which is from the subway shootings that happened a few weeks ago. Of course, you see the big gun with the no gun sign. Like he's trying to say, his message fell flat for people. And people are like, but you're the same guy that's talking about in gun violence, but you want to bring more police back onto the streets of New York City. You just the way you treat homeless is brutal. So you need to change your messaging, sir. So it made me think, Elise, that how do we determine effective activism versus performative gesturing? I want people to put these terms as part of their vocabulary. Effective activism versus performative gesturing. How do you answer this question, Lisa?
Well, I would say anything that is performative is that I'm just doing this. I'm going to put stop gun violence on my jacket and it's going to stop gun violence because people read it and then they're going to be like, oh my God, I didn't know we had a problem. So you put that jacket on. And to me, that's performative. Whereas if you are putting this jacket on and you're doing the work alongside it, then it kind of goes together. To me, it is a little bit tone deaf when you hear the people who are kind of against. I mean, I'm not in New York. I can't say what his policies, what they've done, what they haven't done. I know that the reason why he got elected is because he was so tough on crime. So the fact that you elected him, he is the mayor of New York City, and then you're kind of saying, oh, I don't like the fact that he's saying stop gun violence. It rings a little bit hollow. So I think people who are online should probably look at how you're wording it, because it doesn't look good in words. And when they pull this back up years from now in sound bites. But yes, I would say that's the difference. If you are just doing this for attention, clicks, and likes, performative. If you're actually doing work, meaning you are down at City Hall, you are in contact with your congressman, you are on the ground creating nonprofit organizations or just doing the work. You don't need a nonprofit in order to do that, where you're actually giving back to the community. You're doing the work. I'm okay if you wear a jacket while you do it. Hey, do it.
I mean, I don't know how to feel about this. I don't. I feel like it does feel performative. Like I see.
Is it because he's a politician?
I think so, Lise.
I could see where that could be problematic.
You know what I mean? Even for AOC, and I like AOC, to be honest with you. You know, I like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I like her, and I think she's super progressive. I think she's way ahead of the Democratic Party in some ways, right? But even it's like you're showing up at a gala where rich people are.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's like saying that I'm going to be revolutionary, quote unquote, revolutionary enough to say, even though I'm in this space, I'm not of this space. So tax the rich. You know what I'm saying?
I think it's hypocritical. Like, even for me,
it's like
AOC is cool. I don't agree with a lot of the ways that she goes about, and because I'm more in the vein of I would rather get it done than be the loudest person in the room. And I feel like sometimes on the when we go far left or far right, it's just more about voices than actually getting stuff done. But if you are really be about it, because I talked about those sweatshirts too, AOC. I was like, I don't know, you made these shirts for the rich. I guess you love poor people so much that you made it so expensive that we cannot buy it. And it's specifically for the rich, because it was like $60 for like a shirt.
A sweatshirt.
Yeah, I was like, what? No, AOC. Baby.
Right.
But I would say that this seems a little weird. Like, you're there amongst all of these celebrities and millionaires and billionaires. You have these celebrities who are completely in a different world or different vein. Some people understand the plight of the people, but a lot of them don't. So It does seem a little bit hypocritical. Like, why go at all? Like, you already have this big platform. You didn't need to be there. You wanted to bump elbows with the rich and famous. Let's just call it what it is.
I'm thinking, I think that's what it is for me.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is for me. I understand why that they're, again, they're political officials. New York is, but it does, I think the level of activism that I see, like, it's like somebody wearing a shirt that says, I'm a revolutionary.
Right. If you got to tell me, are you?
Like, I get offended, and I'm not, because I just get offended, and I think back to the real revolutionaries, Dr. King, Huey Newton. We can go down a line, right? Mm-hmm. The people that literally put their lives out on the line. Now, Huey was like, no, I am a revolutionary. Fred Hampton, I am a revolutionary, right? But it becomes this other thing when you gotta say it and you gotta wear it. You know what I'm saying? Martin did it, Malcolm said it, you'd be like, okay, I get it, but see, that just could be my personality. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to knock people being proud of those who came before us and did great works. I'm not going to knock that, but that's just my personality. Like, you don't have to wear everything on your sleeve. Agreed. You don't have to be like, I'm a revolutionary. I fight and advocate for the poor. It's like,
like you're looking for recognition. I mean, it would be like, when Dr. Martin Luther King was giving his speech, he had I am a maverick on his shirt. I mean, maybe he had it underneath on his t-shirt. I don't know, but he didn't have to make it known to the world. I'm like, if you got to tell me, are you really doing the work? I'm not saying that AOC is not taxing the rich, but you're in a dress saying tax the rich next to Beyonce and Jay-Z, who are billionaires. Like, it just doesn't make any. You mean you taxing the people in that room, because that's the people you with, and that's
right. And it's like,
who is this for?
And I think the other thing about it, and we probably need to do a whole segment on this, Lise, which is that politics is an extension of Hollywood.
I would agree with that now. I would agree.
You know what I'm saying? Like, politics has become this, like, DC is just as powerful as Los Angeles. You know what I mean? It's Hollywood, because it's like we, the constituents, we treat the public servants like celebrities.
Yes.
And I think that crosses all racial lines, right? Like, we treat these public servants like celebrities. We don't. And I'm saying en masse, not individually, but some of us may be like, no, hell no, they're public servants. They should do what we want them to do. And I understand it. But en masse, we see them on TV. We listen to them. We believe that they have some, I think subconsciously, we believe that these people are endowed with some greater level of intelligence and some greater level of spiritual and divine favor, which is why they're in the position that they're in. And it's not like that. These people are not. They just not. They don't live up to that standard. Not every single one of them. I'm not crapping on them all, but I'm just saying these are political figures, right? These are people that are supposed to do the great work of governing the people. But I think Hollywood is so influential and powerful. It has literally touched every industry. So in any industry, if you find that you will find celebrities in that industry, and it goes for politics. Even with like the mayor, like Mayor Adams, it's like, Mr. Mayor, I get it, but you don't have to say it. Like, your work will speak for itself, right? If you're putting in the work to make your city safe or your district safe or whatever you're supposed to govern safe, you don't need to say it. It will just speak for itself. You don't need to be like, I believe in stopping gun. Like, who is going to say, you know what? I actually believe in gun violence.
I don't know, but that's why I'm saying, like, the people who are commenting need to be very careful, because some of the comments look like that, so it looks crazy
like,
as hell.
Who says, like, you know what? I do want crappy ass school for my children. Right. You're right. I don't think a great education. Nobody says that.
Right. And I think that in this case, he missed the mark there, but I think what was the theme? Like, in America, the anthology of fashion or whatever. I think it was this year's theme. So maybe it went with the thing. I don't know. I mean, I doubt it, because it's like a group of literary works or something. But whatever the case may be, I think that this just showcases, like you said, we do need to have a bit of a divide between Hollywood and politics, because it's starting to blur. And then we're starting to see, now we had a president that was a game show host, and it's getting to the point where it's very
I mean, Zelensky was a part of, he was an
comedian.
actor and comedian.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that he shouldn't have ran. I'm just trying to help people understand, like, it's hard. And I think you said it best, Lise. It's hard to differentiate between the two worlds, right? Like, I remember, there was a movie that Warren Beatty was in years ago.
Okay.
Where he played a politician. I think he's playing like the president of the United States.
I think
it was Bull something. I forgot the name of it.
Bullworth. Okay.
And it was like a satirical piece to show that Hollywood and DC had this kind of like union, like, because there is the governing side, but then there's also the brand side. There is also, making sure that you fit the mold and the criteria. And it's just like, it's hard. It's hard for Americans. I think, and I'm going to say it like this, Lee. I think it's hard for a lot of us to differentiate between what's real and what's not real.
Agreed.
I think we're, because even in the movies, I never forget watching a movie on Netflix, Don't Look Up, which is a great movie.
I love that movie, by the way.
With Leonardo DiCaprio, it was a great movie, right? But then the crazy part is, like, in the movie during the news scenes and stuff, they would have CNN. And like, movies are becoming so much more realistic that you see like a Wolf Blitzer or Anderson Cooper, or you might see Tucker Carlson in the news segment of the movie. And you're like, oh, and it does something to your head where you can't differentiate. I'm watching a movie versus this being real, because there are elements of reality mixed in with elements of fiction.
Yeah.
So it like makes us psychologically, I think, get into the space where we don't know what the hell we're looking at. So when we look at people in real life, we don't know whether they're actors or
real. And even to take that a step further, not even just being able to differentiate between facts. I think we want to be entertained. That's the part that scares me about the politics and blurring Hollywood, because it's not about who's the best candidate. Like, again, I mentioned this last week about, look what's going on in Pennsylvania. Dr. Oz has a legitimate pathway to win. Why? Because people know who he is. He was on, television. Donald Trump won. He was on television. People know who he is. We don't look at the policy because we feel like we know them, and then that's the problem. Now we're looking at them as, oh, they're great. You know, when little Uzi Vert run for president in whatever year that is, I'm pretty sure he will win too, because people will be like, I'm so.
I don't think you want your president to have a form. Of course he's not going to use the name. He's going to be like, my name is Darnell Johnson, but y'all know me as Lil Uzi Vert.
President,
and I'm running for Congress. You'd be like, what?
Yes, Congressman, New York Congressman, like, 6'9". Tekashi.
Look, I get it. It's just too close for comfort. You know, it's just too much. But I think that when they come back to the whole point about messaging and platform, it's like you have to pick your platform. You have to make sure that it comes across as being appropriate. And if you're going around promoting a certain message, you know what I mean? Like, make sure that it really lands. You know what I'm saying? Like, people are also saying on the chat that it's like when George Floyd was killed, everybody was rocking Black Lives Matter. Mm-hmm. I remember seeing Cuba Gooding Jr. Wearing a Black Lives Matter mask. Mm-hmm. But you're going into a trial where you're like touching women.
Right. It didn't make any sense at all.
Come on, bro. What are you doing, man? You make it like, I believe in the equality of all people, that life is preserved, but it's just the messaging is just ill-timed.
Right. This way you have to be very careful and protect your message. And if you're going somewhere, make sure that the messenger, the person you're trying to get to, is there. Like, who is this for?
Right. So I don't know, Mr. Mayor. Just put that jacket away, man. Please don't pull that joint out anymore, because that's crazy. Then he had like these African like designs and symbols on the jacket. Keenan, just show the jacket one more time. Look at this. Like, he got like, I don't know what is going. Now, this is the brother that made it. It's a Brooklyn artist. Mm-hmm. It's an African brother, but it's just like, bro, I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it, but it doesn't mean that it's terrible. It's just that I don't get it. And I don't think it should have been worn at the Met.
Right. Gala. If you got to explain it to people, you probably made a mistake. Like, that's just go there. If you have to explain it was a mistake.
There it is. Look, we're going to take a final pause. When we come back, Trends Post and Doing the Most. Stay with us. It's The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you may have seen going across your screen on social media that's trending, that people are talking about. All right, here's one. Lise, I want to bring Lise Winnie back into this. Lise, I don't know how to feel about this. Again, this is about messaging and performative gesturing. Nike released a 60-second ad called the Mambacita Sweet 16 shoes on the what would have been the 16th birthday for Gianni Bryant's 16th for her birthday. So they released this ad where there's a 60-second ad dedicated to the daughter of Kobe Bryant on her 16th birthday. Take a look at this, folks.
Time you imagined winning a WNBA championship, I knew one thing was real. You were special. You came from greatness, but it was never about what you inherited. It was about what you gave to others. When someone stands up for gender equality, I see you fighting alongside them. And every time someone plays her hardest, I know that's you on the court. Love you always. Basketball.
Now, Nike and the Bryant estate, they announced the first release since Kobe Bryant's passing, and then profits from the Mambacita Sweet 16 shoes will go to the Mamba and Mambacita Foundation, and includes a message from, of course, from Vanessa Bryant, who is Gigi mom. Now, speaking of messaging, this works.
I think it pulls on the heartstrings. It definitely will sell shoes. I mean, if the Bryant family or his estate is okay with this, who are we to say that they shouldn't? To me, it feels a little bit like you're kind of using that to profit. I don't know. Like you said, I don't know how I feel about that. But if her mother is okay with this, who am I to say it's not okay?
And see, in a situation like that, Lise, that's how I feel.
Yeah.
If the family is all in, why would you get mad?
Right.
But I do see, and I think this is just a part of our culture, we love to capitalize financially off of the death or tragedy of other people.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And it's so sad. It's so sad. Now, again, her mom is behind this. Her mom knew, of course, Kobe already had a deal. May God be pleased with him. Kobe had a deal with Nike and all of that. So hey, look, I hear you. You know what I'm saying? But it's just, I don't know. It's still kind of like, okay, the family allowed it. The family is behind it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still like,
I think this is Vanessa Bryant's way of really honoring Gianna, because she won't get a chance to do and to go to the WNBA, and that's really was her dream. And so maybe for her, this was the way to actually see her daughter's legacy, because she didn't get a chance to really build a legacy to actually live on in lights of what she wanted to do.
Yeah. I mean, look, again, it's a beautiful ad. Janelle checked in and said, Farajii mom, and I'm not crying, you're crying. No, I am crying.
Yeah,
you are crying too, Janelle.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. I mean, it's obviously, you got the music, you got the drawings and all of that. I mean, it's beautiful. It's just like, you know, if it's just unfortunate. Like I said, we're in a culture that if you pass on, or if there's a tragedy and you have a platform, you have a name for yourself, somebody is going to
profit.
Is going to profit off of that.
Yeah.
So I get why Vanessa Bryant did it, because hell, that's my daughter. I'm gonna profit off it. Now, would you get mad? We don't have enough time for this, Lee, but would you get mad if the parents profit off of their children? I mean, the tragedy of their child. You know,
I think off the tragedy, yeah, I think that's a problem. But if this is her legacy, I'm all for it, Vanessa. Let's do it. I might go get me a pair.
Right. You say.
I might, when it's coming out, like this.
Hey, right.
You know.
Right. Let me tell you one thing though. You're never going to stop hearing Kobe Bryant's name.
True. That is very, very true.
The NBA is going to profit. Nike is going to profit. All of his other endorsers are going to profit. Hell, might as well throw the family in there, because if it was me and that was Kobe was a brother of mine, or like, nah, man, we got to take some ownership of this.
Yeah.
We got to take ownership. And, you know, that's the time we live in. So I just wanted to bring that up. We got a lot of more other things that's posted, but we don't have the time right now. But big shout out to the Bryant family, man. And I mean, they're still in a legal battle right now, at least over the photos from the LA County Sheriff's Department and releasing of the photos to the public. They've been back and forth saying that was just totally uncalled for, which I truly agree with.
It was absolutely appalling.
It was, but the crazy part is they are celebrities.
Yeah.
And it's fair game. And I think that's what TMZ, the LA County Sheriff's Department, and others. Your husband was a celebrity, man. He was Kobe Bryant. It was fair game.
One day we're gonna have this conversation because I'm somewhere where I feel like
agree.
They're humans, though. Have some ethics.
I agree.
You gotta have that conversation. Photo, don't share this. That's how.
Right. We gotta have that conversation.
Yeah.
Lise Winnie, host of Millennials Anonymous podcast. Lise, thank you so much. Always a pleasure checking you out. Got the news, the new.
Yes.
You got the new site.
Yes.
I love it.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it's not new, but it's there.
It's new to me.
Yeah, there you go. It's new to you. It's like a used car. It's new to me. So that's all that matters. Yes,
Folks,
just millennials. You got to put a Z on it. .us. You can get to it.
There it is. Millennials Anonymous Podcast Entertainment. I love it. Lise Winnie, it's always a pleasure. Good talking to you, sis. And God willing, we'll be talking soon. All right. Thank you for being so good for the culture, Lise.
Thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me. I thank each and every one of you as well. Make sure y'all support us, blackstarnetwork.com. Y'all know what it is. This is the great website. This is the great network. This is what we're doing. This is the great work we're doing. blackstarnetwork.com. Support us. Black-owned media. Support us financially. You can support us by sharing messages and letting people know when we're on, liking all of the content that we have streaming. And, of course, if you get to see Roland, moving around in some state. He always in some state. Well, he was in Las Vegas doing the George Lopez piece. Was it Las Vegas or Los Angeles? He always somewhere. We should probably do a show called Where's Roland Today? Just like, where's Roland? Like, where's Roland? Because he is always moving. I'm rolling with Roland. So, but make sure you continue to support us, blackstarnetwork.com. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me. Stay tuned. 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time is Big Brother Roland Martin, or a special guest host, because he's always moving around. So make sure y'all still tune in to Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. And God willing, we talk tomorrow. We're going to have another dynamic guest tomorrow. We're going to talk about the latest around the Tulsa massacre, how a new court decision that came up earlier this week shows that they can move forward in making the United States government accountable for the massacre of our people in the Tulsa massacre. And that might include reparations for the family members of the former residents of Tulsa, Oklahoma. We will have that conversation tomorrow and a whole lot more. So make sure y'all come back to us, 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're streaming live, and we look forward to the conversations with you. All right, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace.